passkeys are the next step in the evolution of password managers.
You can see that users between 18 and 24 are actually using TikTok and Instagram to Google stuff.
To de-medicalize death through technology.
Hi and welcome to episode 42 of TechReview. Every week we gather to discuss the hottest topics in technology, innovation and social media. And on camera 4 today we have Chris. On camera 3 we have Vincent. On camera 1, hi, this is me, I am Tarek. TechReview is a collaboration of Ideas Engineering, Free Tech Academy and Update.com. You can watch all episodes on YouTube, but if you prefer to just listen to our beautiful voices while working out, driving a car or flying through space, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts and all major podcast platforms. So, what happened today? I just reloaded my dashboard and it says we will start with me.
One question before we start. What happened to camera 2? Why do we have camera 4, 3 and 1? Where is camera 2?
Yeah, to be honest, I was just too lazy. It was pre-configured and camera 2...
Sorry, man.
on camera 2, this would have been Henrike. And usually I switch the camera positions when she's not there and relocate everything. But I was, no, let's not say too lazy. Let's say too busy. I had too much stuff to do. And so I thought, yeah, okay, the total number of people is okay. And camera 2 is just offline. So, hi, Henrike. But let's start with my first article, which says, an article from Ars Technica. It says, RIP passwords, passkey support rollout to Chrome stable. And this is super interesting, or let's say I find it super interesting, because passkeys are the next step in the evolution of password managers. Passkeys use the WebAuthn standard to generate a public-private key pair, just like SSH. Yeah, we already know this and are familiar with this. And while passwords can be used insecurely with short text strings, and they are shared across many sites, for example, a passkey is always enforced to be unique in content and length. Passkeys essentially require a portable device, like your smartphone, even if you're logging into a stationary PC. But it's like the second authentication thing that you're using. The first time you set up a device, you'll need to verify that your authentic device is in close proximity to whatever you're signing into. And this proximity check usually happens over Bluetooth, as we are using them in the COVID proximity apps. And soon, passkeys will be supported on iOS and Android and Chrome OS, but not Windows or Linux or Chrome OS. Yeah. No, they will be supported for Chrome OS, but in Windows, I think in Windows it's just, I have to check again. I think in Windows it's just Windows 11. It's not supported on Windows 10, which is a problem because there are far more users on Windows 10 than 11 right now. And this passkeys thing that is going to utilize the inbuilt key store. That's why it is important on which operating system you are on. And this keychain will use the Google Password Manager or a third-party app on Android. And on Windows, it's this Hello system, for the Windows Hello system. And some of these platforms have then the capability of even syncing these keys across devices. Some do not. It depends on the operating system or the third-party app. And so far it is not supported by Android yet, but Google is working on that. And so it is super interesting because I'm not sure if you ever thought about how passwords on websites are working. You have this input field, which is requesting a text input, and you're typing something in, and this is then your way of authenticating against this website. And using a password manager, it's basically using JavaScript to copy and paste something from their database into this input field for human beings and then send this form simulating that you have typed something in there. And so this is a super hacky way to automate this way of authentication. And now with this new passkey system, we finally use a form of authentication which bypasses this antique manual password input field. And so far, of course, it's just experimental and it's not widely rolled out yet. But I am super, super confident that this will be a new standard at some point of time, that you will be able to authenticate by using your third-party device in your pocket, which then shows as this second factor that you are in close proximity, and then it will access your pass key storage and authenticate against the service. Yeah, and so it's super interesting to see that Google is now rolling out this first phase, because then we will go into this process of seeing it in the next years being supported by more operating systems. Vincent.
Can you just quickly further elaborate on how does that work with a mobile device where I log into a mobile device? So when I'm thinking right now about something, I'm thinking about something like Apple Keychain, where I have a code that I usually put into, or Microsoft, which is more going to the, just like Google does, by the way, with the authenticator app, where I just press on authenticate, and then depends on the third-party app, I have to enter another code or I don't. So how does that work with that? So I sign in with my phone and I authenticate with my phone. That does make a lot of sense.
You are right. This is a very, very good question. And I can't directly answer it, because on the one hand, if your phone is aware that it is a phone, then you could say having it with you is already like the proof that you're not hacked from somewhere far. But using it as a second factor authentication, you need like this independent second factor. So before I tell a lie and start guessing, I'm not sure if this already works.
Because when I think of it, I can see that for important apps, I'm very happy that it's there. So apps that contain personal information, I'm very happy about two-factor authentication. And I know a lot of people at work, for everybody who does not work at Axel Springer, where we work, we use the Microsoft 365 cloud. And there we also use the Microsoft Authenticator to sign into these apps. And I know a lot of people hate that because it requests your authentication a few times a week. Yeah. But I do have to say that since I have the Authenticator app, that process is quite fun, actually. It's quite nice to see how fast these systems work with each other. Maybe I'm a nerd on this, but I really like that I can press yes, and then it signs in. It is so crazy. I actually turned the same functionality on my personal Microsoft account. So every time I sign into my Xbox, into my PC, and anything else, or I saw that Microsoft is rolling out SSL support on a lot of additional websites. It's crazy. I use the Authenticator app and not the password app. Anyways, doesn't matter. What I want to say is that besides those apps, it's really annoying. I really hate two-factor authentication. And so I would maybe disagree with you, because when I just sign into, say, I don't know, the website of my theater I go to watch movies, I really don't need a third-party device to just log in, then log in again on my PayPal to then buy tickets.
Yeah. So I just tried to skim through the text to find an answer, and there are like these hints that you don't require a phone, but only any portable device. So it might also be a tablet, and maybe if you're using the phone with a LiDAR scanner, maybe your face as biometric scan would be the second techie authentication.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Okay. But as I said, I'm not 100% sure. This is what I spontaneously interpret. But there's this demo site at passkey.io. I did not register yet. I did not try it out yet, but I'm super interested in trying it and being like a early adopter on this, even though I'm also not sure if how far this is downloads compatible, if it's having like this, if your device or the service does not support this, you are still able to enter like a old school password or something, because as we see here, there's not 100% support yet, and so there will be cases where you won't be able to authenticate if you're 100% depending on this new system.
Actually quite funny, because when you look at percentages worldwide, it's not like there is not 100% support for it, but actually there's like, I don't know how many, like I would argue 20% support in all systems, because I mean, since we all act like Apple is reinventing the wheel, but Microsoft has like the lion's share of the computer market, software market, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, we act like Microsoft is slow with this, even though this is a niche development compared to what Microsoft has with Windows.
Right.
So I really like the perspective.
Okay.
And now, this.
And now let's continue with Vincent and young users, as I see in the headline.
Yes, it's Vincent and young users. That's what it's all about. I'm not young, so yeah, users are. No, basically this is about TikTok, and it's about something that I brought in the last tech review. Yeah, sorry. It's about something, the last tech review I brought. It's about Amazon and shopping, and it's about how young users, when you scroll down, you see a chart from the latest Reuters report. You can see that users between 18 and 24 are actually using TikTok and Instagram to Google stuff. And I know how weird that sounds. Let me rephrase, to search for stuff. Yeah. But we can see that there is a significant trend. And it's interesting because it's mainly for shopping, mainly for restaurants, tips around, I don't know, say city when you're doing a trip or anything like that. And yeah, it's very impressive to see how those numbers changed. And specifically interesting for us is that this also develops in the field of news. And that brings a few questions with us. The second chart is going into that direction. We can see that classic journalistic brands, publishers, so to say, and journalists themselves are by far not as interesting to users on those platforms than internet personalities are. And that comes with a lot of flaws, obviously, because we cannot ensure that the information they're sharing is right. But then again, we could also argue, and I mean, this is something I actively work on, obviously, in my role. We could also say that it is our role as a traditional publisher to go where the market is going, to develop or produce, or whatever you want to call it, news media, legitimate news media where the market is going. Legitimacy. I don't know how to say that. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, I thought it was very interesting. We can see that trend going on and on and on. And so I think this is one more wake-up call for every traditional publisher that, please become an internet personality ASAP. Yeah, it's a long article, but that's what it says basically.
Yeah, but I totally agree with what you said in the beginning, that this trend is obvious. And as we see the shopping market, for example, also moving towards this For You page-like swiping experience, and people get more and more used to this kind of content, I could absolutely imagine that also in the news market, this trend will start to impact. And I know that there are a lot of people who are already consuming their news completely from their news feed, being it the news feed from their Facebook page or on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. And it is already served in this way. Yeah, and I can't imagine that this trend will completely pass by the news industry. There will be a change, definitely.
Yeah, but it's not that easy, right? So,
sure.
As Vincent said, you need like really internet personalities, and that's really, you just don't grow those people in your garden. So it's, and that's totally different to the business which we had so far, right? So you had like journalists, and they were like sitting in their editorial rooms, and then they had research, and then they were writing a nice article based on facts and everything. But it's not necessarily the person who actually created this quality piece of news, right? And then had been published. And this is a totally different precondition, which we now see in TikTok, because there the news might not be of that quality, but the person has some kind of attraction to those kids mostly, right? Or to Gen Z mainly. And so that is something, the value is different to what we have like in in the conventional news media sector. And as said, the second thing is that it's difficult to grow up those people. So I don't think that is a problem which can be easily solved. Yeah, we should go where the market is, but with whom and with what? So there is a totally new concept needed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Vincent,
no,
please.
Tarek, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say that we also did some experiments with how to move news into TikTok, for example, or this kind of live feed. And what I see on TikTok, for example, they mix up their static videos and live content. And so while you're swiping through the For You page, there's also this teaser for live content. And I could imagine, for example, if it's regarding news, that you produce either short teaser videos for your articles, and then if you're interested, you're like tapping on it and jump into the complete news article or the complete feed of this thing that you want to see, or actually having this feature where you see snippets from, let's say, the news broadcast, as a live feed on the social platform, and then you can decide to swipe further, as you did in the past with your remote control and the TV when you were zapping through it. But I can absolutely imagine that this might be the new way of serving news. I personally use the Google News app, and this one is learning my behavior of what kind of news headlines I prefer, and so it serves me more of this kind. And so I trained this news app to serve me exactly what I want to see. And so I could imagine that a TikTok feed style news app that learns my behavior and learns what kind of news articles are interesting for me starts serving me more of this kind. So the swiping, consuming behavior for news, I think it is imaginable. If our tech review is valuable for you, please give us feedback with a like or a comment. That would help us tremendously, and it wouldn't cost you anything. And if you don't want to miss the next episode, just click on the subscribe button. And now, back to the news. But Vincent, you want to say something?
No, I wanted to say something very similar. I also wanted to mention, without spoiling too much about our other lives outside of the tech review world, that especially you and I, we know how hard it is to bring news to social media platforms. And I want to say that Chris is absolutely right. It is difficult because I can see that the way journalists are right now working is not the way of the future, right? You're not only writing content anymore. I'm not only in the terms of this is one way of content. You need to be a personality, right? You need to perform also as an entertainer, and that, I think, is the difficult part. And this is why we see so many creators individually and not a brand or a lot of brands succeeding with a creator model, because you need to have that one way of presenting. And obviously some individuals would do that. Maybe we're lucky and they're with us or another publisher, then we're unlucky, but it is very unlikely that we just set out to be the number one creators and this will happen. So the question is, do we need to rethink maybe our newsroom in order to serve individuals as well as possible, so that in the end we have a lot of newsroom members contributing but not being visible? Also a fun idea, just saying it, would be to broadcast our TV stations. I mean, we own 2 TV stations. Maybe we should broadcast them on a 24/7 live just to see what happens. We would need to transfer everything into a vertical format, so this is quite hell for video editing, but I could see this performing. I could see that. I mean, this would be a crazy endeavor, but yes. And
at least trying, right? Making this experiment and see what is going to happen. If nobody's interested in this, or this format is not convertible in this way, okay, then we know it. Yeah? But as long as we don't test it, we won't know.
I mean, we could easily set this up, Tarek, by the way.
Definitely,
we could.
Absolutely.
I mean, we have the free TV lives. We have the access to direct streaming via TikTok verified accounts. Technically, we could just try it and see what happens.
Yeah, it's crazy that we are actually not limited by the technical hurdles, but by legal and organizational red flags, right? I agree.
Yeah.
From the technical point of view, we can start tomorrow. Everything's there.
Yeah, but interesting question that actually brings up also regarding the implications that has, right? Like, for instance, thinking about the öffentlich-rechtlichen news media services, right? So if like the older generations, the older target group is more or less fading away, so to say, and being replaced by newer target groups, especially coming from Gen Z, who has a totally different behavior in the consumption of news, like as you describe it, then the question should be legitimate, and even more legitimate than it is already now. How useful is then the öffentlich-rechtliche News Media Anstalt? And I mean, there's so much money getting in there, and you're being forced to pay that. But the influence they have and the people they reach, they're getting less and less and less. So also here, one should be thinking about a totally different concept. On the other hand, to understand that from the government perspective, that is hell. For instance, because like with öffentlich-rechtliche, like you have 2 or 3 of those TV stations, and then that's it, right? So you can, I don't want to say you can control them, but you can, but you can actually, they have their order, if you want it that way, to send out and to publish the official governmental news, also point of view and stuff. But then, on the other hand, if you have like an army of influencers there, you definitely cannot control those guys, right? So everybody is talking whatever they want to talk about. So what does that mean? What implications does that have? What does it mean for democracy? Is that maybe even more democratic than what we have now, where you have just like 2 or 3 stations? If you have like 3,000 or 4,000 stations, on the other hand, you're true. So you cannot be sure that people always talk about facts. Maybe they just like fake news, right? So you cannot actually control that. And the next person maybe is more about it's their own personality and not about the things they are talking about, like the correct news which they actually bring into society. So there's so many aspects which you really have to think about and which are very, very difficult to control. So that might be interesting to see what happens in the future there.
Yeah.
And as said, for us, it means we have to definitely change our concept. So we have to grow more personalities as news moderators and create influencers, so to say, as a news media station. And a journalist nowadays is definitely something different than it will be in, let's say, 10 years' time.
Yeah, absolutely. We will keep a close eye on this.
And now, this.
But now, first, let's jump to this messy morality of letting AI make life and death decisions. Chris.
Yeah, again, AI, again, decision-making AI, right? So like we have that very often, but it's a topic I'm really into, and the more I read about it, the more I get to think about it, the more it takes my interest. This article actually is about a guy called Philip Nitschke. He is with a non-profit organization called Exit International, and is running like 24 years now, or 25 years campaign actually, to de-medicalize death through technology. Right, so it's based in Switzerland. Because Switzerland is one of a handful of countries actually that have legalized assisted suicide. And Philip Nitschke has created this tool, which you can see here in the picture, a coffin-sized pot called the Sarco. And the idea here is that a person who has chosen actually to die is sealed inside the machine. And then the person has to answer 3 questions. Who are you? Where are you? And do you know what will happen when you press the button? Right. So it's probably about the clearness of the person's mind. And if that is being answered correctly, then the Sarco will be filled with nitrogen gas, and the person inside will pass out within 1 minute or so and will die within around 5 minutes. So that's a self-induced suicide, and so that's a suicide in the end. And now this is actually where the AI comes into the game to make it more, whatever you want to call it. The idea is that the AI allows people also, additionally, so to say, to perform a kind of psychiatric test, self-test, so to decide if you are really convinced to do of what you're currently about doing, if you really want to do that, if you really are prepared to take the last step, so to say. And if this result of this psychological test is positive, then the AI provides a 4-digit code and you can activate the Sarco, right? And again, we have handed over a little bit of a kind of decision to an AI. I'm not quite sure if it's really difficult. I don't want to judge that. I just want to put that into the discussion. But again, we have something which has been handed over to an AI, right? In this case, a decision on life and death. And interesting, also in that article, a little bit further down, there was other aspects of also life and death questions that have been handed over to AIs again. And we've seen that during the pandemic and in the first year especially, where the doctors and hospitals and so had to make decisions about who would receive immediate care and who would not, right? And sometimes with tragic consequences. So that is in the end a triage decision they had to make. And of course, also here, the question came up if algorithms, if AIs actually could be helping. And what we saw during the pandemic was that indeed there was a jump on the demand for such technology in the first year of the pandemic. And that hospitals all around the world really bought such tools to assist with the triage thing. And I can understand the need and the demand and where the wish actually comes from to have these systems. On the other hand, this development, of course, raises a bunch of ethical questions, right? And there is no easy answer to that. Questions might be, what kind of decision is really appropriate to give in the hands of an algorithm, right? And how should these algorithms be built? And who gets a say in how these algorithms will be developed, right? I mean, especially if you consider this black box aspect, which we have discussed before. So you cannot be sure that the AI really takes the right decision in there. Maybe you have this lottery win and you are one of those 10,000 people, the edge case, this one edge case, where the AI decides not the way a human would, but what if the AI decides against you in this triage situation, right? So, I mean, yeah, of course, the percentage is very low, but nonetheless, it's bad luck for you if you are the winner in this, so to say, lottery, right? And then we had these other aspects which we have in AI systems nowadays, the discrimination aspect. Also here, I mean, what if the AI decides not on the facts, on the medical facts, but maybe on some aspects which are more based on discrimination? However, that discrimination might have been built into that algorithm. But we've seen that in the chatbots and so on. So you cannot be sure that it will not happen in such systems. And last not least, of course, there might be also clear economical, political interests of special parties who might be even building those systems, who might give it a little kick in one or another direction for whatever reasons or for whatever interests that they have, so that you can also not be sure if that system is not being biased. And I'm really highly doubtful if in questions like these, although it might be of great help on the one hand, it would be a very ethical, good decision to put questions like these and decisions like these into the hands of an algorithm.
Yeah, for me, it's like I said last week when we discussed this topic. The big question for me is always not if the AI is capable of making perfect decisions, but if the AI is at least as good or better than human beings, and being like influenced or biased as a human doctor, and having your triage be influenced and saving like the wrong group of people might happen for you as a person. There we have this very specialized question, and we have to bring the mass of patients to a certain order to save the people who are most likely to be saved. And this is like a very medical question. The machine might be able to predict even more precise than a human doctor and quicker which people to save. So in case of a triage, this might be very, very helpful, simply because the AI might be better. And also for the psychology of the doctors. I think this must be like the worst thing for a doctor to make this decision who has to die and who could receive the risk of surviving, especially if this person then does not survive. The doctor will always ask themselves, did I make the right decision? And having this made by an AI might help the patients and the doctors. And so I don't think that this might be necessarily a bad thing. I think this might actually be a very, very valuable use case. And in the other scenario with a suicide booth, I call it suicide booth because it sounds exactly like Futurama and the suicide booths, if you know Futurama as the TV show. There, again, the AI is not supposed to give therapy, right? It's not like a doctor. It's like a quality gate to make sure that the person who wants to die actually is capable of making this decision and actively is doing this decision. And again, it's like a very, very narrow use case where the AI can be trained precise enough to replace a human being in this decision loop. Yeah, it's not the general AI that is supposed to give therapy to talk this person out of suicidal thoughts or something like that. If the assisted dying is legal and the machine has exactly this mission and this purpose of finding out if this person is clear-minded enough to make this decision for himself, then I think the AI should be capable of doing this very precise thing. Replacing like a human doctor for all medical care with an AI, I think this might be critical, because the AI is not general enough to do everything that a doctor is doing. But for these very, very specific use cases, I think those might actually be perfect use cases for the use of AI. This is my personal opinion.
Yeah, so in both use cases, I'm actually missing the human factor, to be honest.
The question is, do you need the human factor? I think removing the human factor in these decisions might actually be what we need to make this process better.
Coming back to the AI discussion we had in the last tech review, where in the end we asked ourselves, or where one could ask, who does less mistakes? So maybe the human factor, therefore, is even more risky. And you can see that with very basic, I read one article about very basic studies where an AI obviously in the end selected a better method than even a very educated doctor. So maybe you don't need the human factor.
I mean, absolutely. This is now where we are moving again in the philosophical discussion and this ethical discussion. There's this thought experiment of you have the choice of switching the tracks of a train and save 10 people who are standing on the train tracks, but you have to sacrifice the one person that's standing on the other tracks. So you actively have to move the lever to move the train to the other side, and you can be proud of yourself because you saved 10 people by sacrificing one person, but you are personally responsible for killing this one person on the other tracks. Yeah, and so with the AI discussion, it's kind of a similar thing. If we see the AI is capable of saving 10 times the people than the human doctor could, that's great. But what with the one person who dies an unnecessary death because the AI was doing some crazy thing that a person would never have done? With autonomous driving, maybe we have 10 times fewer accidents with self-driving cars, but then one day the car just drives into like a wall because it thought it was sky or something like that. And you say, what is happening? This person could have lived, but at the same time, we saved 100 other people with the AI software. And this is this moral dilemma that we are in, right?
Okay, maybe some famous last words regarding AIs and perfection and the human factor. I think it's, in the end, imperfection that makes us human.
Yeah, it's nice and philosophical as long as we are not responsible for deaths. But you're totally right. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for your contributions to Tech Review 42. As always, see you next week, same time, same place. Bye.
Bye-bye.